win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB16 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 31st of October. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I ever got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good evening. Tonight we'll be joined by Donald Trump's border czar, under whom 2 million illegal immigrants have left America since January of this year. We'll ask if he can do it, why can't we in this country? We'll then be joined by a former advisor to Andy Burnham as he appears on the front page of the New Statesman this week. It looks like the leadership bid really is on. And finally we'll be joined by Arthur Laffer, a man who's argued for decades that if you put taxes up too much, the revenues go down. And we'll discuss that in the context of the upcoming budget on the 26th of November. That and much more with my expert panel. But first, let's get the news with Tatiana Sanchez.
Nigel, thank you very much. The top stories. Well, a family of 3, including a small child, have become the first people to arrive in the UK under Sir Keir Starmer's one-in, one-out immigration deal with France. The Home Office said the move was part of critical first steps under the scheme after the removal of 4 people from Britain. The agreement, which came into force last month, is aimed at deporting migrants who've crossed the English Channel in exchange for those who apply in France and are approved to come to the UK. The government says the newly established legal route for those entering the country includes rigorous documentation as well as eligibility and security checks. The FBI says a shooting at a customs enforcement field office in Dallas is being investigated as an act of targeted violence. Police said 3 detainees were shot, 2 had died, 1 is in a critical condition. The attacker also died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Dallas FBI Special Agent Joseph Rothrock said it was a coordinated attack and just the most recent example we've seen of targeted violence. He also said early evidence suggested the attack was anti-ICE in nature. The London mayor has branded Donald Trump racist, sexist and Islamophobic after the US president claimed the mayor wants London to go to Sharia law.
I look at London, where you have a terrible mayor, terrible mayor, and it's been so changed. Now they want to go to Sharia law, but you're in a different country. You can't do that.
Sadiq Khan hit back, saying he has squatters' rights in Mr Trump's head and is thankful for record numbers of American visitors. Labour dismissed the attacks, saying the president was misreading London and stressing it remains a global hub of law, culture and creativity. Reform UK leader Nigel Farage backed Trump's concerns, saying Sharia is an issue in London but not an overwhelming one. And Volodymyr Zelensky addressed the UN General Assembly today, opening his speech by saying only we can guarantee our own security. He said Vladimir Putin will keep driving the Ukraine war wider and deeper unless he is stopped. There are no real security guarantees except friends and weapons, he said, adding the world is living through the most destructive arms race in human history. He said that because international institutions are too weak, Russia's madness continues.
Estonia had to call a UN Security Council meeting for the first time in history because Russian fighter jets deliberately entered its airspace. Moldova is defending itself again from Russia's interference. We have helping Moldova, and Russia's trying to do to Moldova what Iran once did to Lebanon. And the global response, again, not enough.
Zelensky was speaking after US President Donald Trump shifted his position on the Russia-Ukraine war, saying for the first time that Ukraine could win all of its land back. Donald Trump called Russia a paper tiger in big economic trouble, but he stopped short of pledging more US funding or weapons for Ukraine. Russia hit back, insisting Moscow is more bear than paper tiger. And those are the latest GB News headlines. For now, it's back to Farage.
You can now watch GB News live across the United States of America and the world on Truth Plus. Scan the QR code to find out more, or visit gbnews.com/truth.
Good evening. Our first guest this evening, down the line from Washington, D.C., is Tom Homan. He is President Trump's border czar. Now, he's somebody that's been involved in border enforcement for absolutely decades, and you can see a picture of him as a young man coming up on your screen, looking pretty cool. He's gone on, he's served several administrations, and he is pretty uncompromising. See him on this recent clip on the big American TV show, 60 Minutes.
Is there a way to carry out mass deportation without separating families?
Of course there is. Families can be deported together.
Why should a child who is an American citizen have to pack up and move to a country that they don't know?
Because their parent obviously entered the country illegally, had a child knowing he was in the country illegally, so he created that crisis.
Well, under Tom's tenure, there have been some quite remarkable results. Have a look at this graph of US border crossings over the course of the last few years. And you can see the massive spike that was occurring during the time of Joe Biden's presidency. And look now where the numbers are. They have fallen by 97%. Quite remarkable. And the Department of Homeland Security have announced that 2 million illegal immigrants have been removed or self-deported since January the 20th, the inauguration of the president. These are truly astonishing figures, although there does appear to be some backlash against it. And I'm very pleased that Tom Homan joins me down the line now. Tom, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us here on GB News. Just quickly, before asking how you've managed to achieve these extraordinary numbers, clearly something of a backlash in Texas today with this horrible shooting and with anti-ICE being written on the unspent bullets. Is this the first such incident, or is this now a regular thing?
No, there's been many incidents. Assaults against ICE, attacks against ICE have increased over 1,000%. 1,000%. And I think there's a lot that has to do with hateful rhetoric. And I said months ago, this hateful rhetoric, if it continues, there's going to be bloodshed. Someone's going to die. And of course, the left attacked me as being a fear-monger. But I stood by what I said, and unfortunately, I was right. No, this is the third shooting in Texas. We had one shooting at a Border Patrol facility where they're shooting at a building full of Border Patrol agents. He ended up dying in exchange of gunfire. Then there's another attack just south of Dallas, Texas, where today's incident occurred, where a group of people attacked an ICE facility and ended up shooting one officer through the neck. Then this latest one at another ICE facility in Texas, where a lone gunman shot at people being transferred into the facility. And unfortunately, we had two migrants that have died, one serious, and no officers were hurt. But later on, when they found the perch where this gunman was sitting, they had, one of the shell casings had anti-ICE on it. Yeah. So, this was another ICE attack.
Yeah, and now, look, the president was elected on this ticket that he'd stop the border crossings, he would deport people who'd come to America illegally. And let's just begin by talking about this Department of Homeland Security announcement. So, as I understand it, 1.6 million people who came into America illegally have gone voluntarily. How, Tom, have you managed that?
There's consequences, right? So we have over 1,000 ICE teams out on the streets every day enforcing the immigration law. We send a clear message to the whole world that if you're here illegally, especially if you're a public safety threat and national security threat, we're looking for you, you're going to be gone. But we're also going to enforce the law against other illegal immigrants. So, you know, we've been pushing hard. They know what the consequences are. We're letting ICE agents do exactly what they're supposed to be doing, and the message is getting out. So I think a lot of people are choosing to leave on their own rather than, being formally deported, because if they're formally deported by ICE, then they have a statutory bar where they can't come back to the country for a period of time, for anywhere from 5 to 20 years to never, depending on a specific case. And we've been advertising a lot that leave on your own and leave yourself available to come back under a legal program in the future. But if we have to seek you out and remove you, you may never come back, never be allowed for a visa, or if you have a U.S. citizen child, they can't petition for you. So we've sent a strong message. I think they're listening. So it's been very successful. These consequences, these self-removals, was a part of our strategy from the beginning. That's why we made sure that people realize there's consequences. You see 1,000 teams out there every day. Leave on your own and make life easier for yourself in the future.
Now, 2 million, in the space of, well, let's face it, it wasn't until the end of January that Trump became the 47th president. Do you have a target, Tom, over the course of this 4-year presidential term?
No, I don't have a numerical target. I just said I'll be happy when every illegal alien public safety threat and national security threat are no longer in this country. That'd be number one. And number two is enforcing the immigration law. I said before, it's not okay to be in this country illegally. It's not okay to enter this country illegally. And a lot of people think that's awful, strong stance to take, but I need to remind people there are thousands, millions of people around the world standing in line, taking their tests, getting their background investigation, paying their fees, to do things the right way, to be part of the greatest nation on earth. And these people are all in the back seat because millions of people came across the border and Joe Biden cheated the system. They got in front of the line illegally, entered the country illegally, and make a false claim to asylum. And there are thousands of people in the world that really do need our protection because of race, religion, and political affiliation, and they're sitting in the back of the bus. So, no, this is about consequences. It's about enforcing the law.
Yeah. And on the border, famously in the 2016 campaign, Donald Trump talked about building a great big, beautiful wall on the southern border. How is it that crossings have fallen? Because we've got a problem here in this country, as you well know, and we discussed it the other week. How is it you've managed to get crossings down by 97%? Have you built a big wall?
Well, the wall helps, but I think it's ending catch and release. We send a strong message. If you come to the border illegally, you're not being released to wait for a hearing you probably never show up at anyways. So we ended catch and release. Look, the law is clear in federal statute. If you come to the border without proper documentation, you shall be detained. Not maybe, not think about it, not have options, shall be detained. So here's your option. You come to the border legally, you're either going to be detained or immediately removed. You're not going to be released in the United States to not show up in court in the future. We also got the third safe country agreement, so people should be claiming asylum in the first free country they come to. A lot of these times, people pass through several countries, free countries. If they're really escaping fear and persecution from their home government, why are they not claiming asylum in the first free country they come to? So that's important. But the wall works. The walls work. Every place a wall's been built, a barrier's been put in, illegal immigration's declined, illegal drug flow declined. But one of the things about the wall that no one talks about, and I do, the wall saves lives. Because women and children, the most vulnerable, can't get over the wall, which means they go to a place where there's not a wall, and the men and women on the Border Patrol will be there to take care of those humanitarian needs, and because a lot of these people are in bad shape and they get there. So, I think with President Trump, with illegal immigration down 96, 97%, when the border is that secure, it saves lives. Less people are coming to the border, which means less people are selling everything they own to give it to a criminal cartel to swim across the river. Less women are being raped. Less children are dying making that journey. Less aliens are dying overall, because over 4,000, a historic number, died under Joe Biden. Secure border saves lives, and that's exactly what we did. President Trump is saving thousands of lives every month.
Tom Homan, thank you very much indeed for joining me live from the White House. Thank you. Well,
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much indeed. I'm joined by Jeff Hoon and Kwasi Kwarteng. That was all pretty straightforward.
Yeah, it was very clear, very muscular. I'm not sure that in the UK necessarily that would work. But he had a very clear account of what they're doing.
Well, clearly, I mean, you know, we've looked at the shooting that's happened today, and he's made the point that there have been many violent attacks against ICE officers against this process. But kind of, if Trump was elected to do this, then they're doing the right thing.
Well, look, I mean, he's been very clear, the president, that he felt that was unacceptable. Anecdotally, and I think there's some data to show this, immigration was a big issue for his voters.
Yep.
And he won the presidency. And as a Democrat, I mean, a person who believes in democracy, we've got to accept that.
Jeff, your days in government, the Labour Party actually was very tough in those days about deporting people who came into Britain illegally. What do you make of the American approach? What do you make of the words that Tom spoke?
I think it's first of all important to say that immigration into the United States is very different from immigration into the UK.
What on
has a different history. Every one of my relatives in the United States, every one of my friends there, can tell you exactly when their father, their grandfather, occasionally their great-grandfather arrived. President Trump is the product of two immigrants to the United States. So immigration into the United States has a long history. And I suspect that many of the people trying to cross the border from the south are people who think that that policy, a relatively open policy into the 60s and 70s, is still in existence. It clearly isn't, and I totally agree with Kwasi's point. President Trump was elected on a very clear commitment to deal with immigration. But there is a real difference between a country that's built on immigration, as the United States is, and a country like the United Kingdom, where immigration has not been a huge feature of our population.
Well, it has since Tony Blair came to power. I mean, the population's risen by 10 million, nearly all of that directly or indirectly through immigration. I mean, it's changed a lot in the last 25 years.
But one of the differences between that immigration, which is largely from the EU, and the kind of immigration we're seeing today, actually, as a result of changes that Boris Johnson made, is that immigration from the EU was often from people who were coming here for specific periods of time. They were coming to learn, they were coming to study, perhaps gain experience, but they weren't necessarily giving up on their family back in Poland or Italy or Portugal. Many people I've met were working in the health service to gain experience. What I think was damaging about the relaxation that Boris Johnson made is that as a result of leaving the EU, we ended up bringing in large numbers of people from the Far East who, frankly, are going to stay.
And that was our choice. That was
a terrible mistake.
But the broader point that we're trying to make, that I would make, is that it's in a way it's the principle. So they are very, very tough on this issue, and the government I was part of wasn't, and I'm not sure that the Labour government will be particularly tough on
I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll leave it there. We'll take a break, and we'll come back, and I will ask my panel the question: given that both the last government and this government publicly say that they will deal with illegal immigration, are there lessons we can learn from the USA?
you want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power?
Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber.
Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics.
We'll see where this ruling takes us.
These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Well, some of your reactions to that very straightforward, very frank interview with Tom Homan. Sandy says, we desperately need Tom Homan here in the UK. He has shown the way to go. Peter says, wow, Tom is awesome. We desperately need this approach in the UK. Well done, America. A fantastic example to the rest of the Western world. And Adrian says, if only the politicians had a backbone like Tom Homan in this country. Well, quite overwhelming support from those, and unsurprisingly. And Jeff, so let's be clear, Trump was elected saying, I'll stop the border crossings, which he's pretty much done. I mean, you know, you've got to give him credit for that. He's pretty much done it. And we will deport those that are here illegally. But we keep saying that in this country and not delivering.
Well, actually, the United States has exactly the same problem that we have. It's the law. And the problem that the United States faces is, although they have been very successful in deporting this year's illegal immigrants, there are 11 million queuing up to go to an immigration court. And as I understand the law in the United States, they cannot be deported until they've had a hearing in an immigration court.
After they've been there for a period of time?
Well, after they've been there for a period of time, but nevertheless, that's a fairly short period of time. Once they are in the United States, they do have the right to go to an immigration court. And that's essentially the same problem that governments here have had. We have to observe the law. We have to follow the rule of law, and that means people have the right to go to court to test whether or not their claim to asylum is right or wrong.
But that's where the problem is particularly acute here, because you've got a process. There's a huge backlog. And, you know, the Labour government's blamed the Tories. I don't know what they're doing about it, but there's a huge backlog in processing in the way that you've described.
Well, as I understand it, the Conservatives deliberately slowed it down because they did not want large numbers of people gaining asylum. And that's the problem that Labour inherited.
But the difference, Jeff, is that there's no Human Rights Act in America. There's no outdated ECHR. They don't worry about UN conventions.
There is a Human Rights Act in America. It's called the Bill of Rights.
No, but it's not the same. It's not the ECHR style. You know, and also, of course, American courts will take different decisions in different states. According to whether they're Republican or Democrat.
I agree with you on this. I think we've got a problem, frankly, with judicial overreach, let me put it that way, because there are lots of countless examples of people who were about to be deported or were going to be deported. Just the other week, 2 weeks ago, we had someone who appealed. I think he was from Eritrea. He appealed against a deportation, and the judge said upheld his claim against the Home Office. So there is an issue here, and we can't just pretend.
No, there's a huge issue. I mean, you guys made. You know, Boris went to Lydd Airport in Kent. It was the big Rwanda initiative. I remember the Home Secretary.
But Rwanda was frustrated by lots of things, including the courts.
But let's just remind ourselves what happened. There was an aeroplane on the tarmac, ready to go. When at 10 o'clock at night, a single judge in Strasbourg said, hold your horses.
Yes. I think that's a big issue. I think that's a big issue in terms of getting And also, a lot of them are criminals. I mean, they're people who've done bad things. And yet the judiciary has often sided with them when we've tried to deport them.
Is it time to cut the Gordian knot of the ECHR to leave British courts freer to make decisions?
So my view on this is that the ECHR will not be leaving the ECHR will not be a silver bullet, but it's a start. And I think the party, my party, the Conservative Party, is slowly but surely, I hope, getting to that position. Because clearly, once you're within and Labour have been very clear, they want to stay within that, and they think we can solve this problem.
Well, this is the thing, Jeff, isn't it? I mean,
the ECHR.
Starmer's pitch was, look, I've been a prosecutor, I've dealt with terrorism, I've dealt with the most awful kinds of gangs. We are going to smash the gangs. That will stop the flow or reduce the flow of people into Britain. It's actually getting worse. What does he do next?
Well, I agree with Kwasi, first of all, that taking us out of the ECHR isn't going to be the answer, because there are a whole set of international agreements going right back to 1951. There's asylum.
And we have to disapply all of them.
But it's a start. It's a start. For me, it's a start.
The problem if we disapply all of them is that we end up in the same camp as Russia. We end up as a country that's a pariah, that isn't observing the rule of law.
Australia's not part of it.
They're not part of it, but they are signed up to the same international agreements, as is, incidentally, the United States. Asylum claims are receivable in the United States.
You can't deny that the ECHR is an obstacle to a more robust policy. I mean, I don't see how you can deny that.
But the government have made clear that they will look at the terms, particularly the right to family life, and enact legislation that actually addresses that problem. So the government are alive to these issues, but I don't think we should be throwing out the baby with the bathwater and saying we're going to abandon the rule of law. We don't like this particular piece of law. That's the attitude. Frankly, that's the attitude.
We had the rule of law for centuries with common law. What you guys did by bringing in the Human Rights Act was a really...
But I also think that judges will apply the common law. They will not simply allow families to be separated. They will simply not allow people to be sent back without legal process. And they will apply principles of common law if necessary.
I think that's a very good point, because if the judge is minded to reject the deportation, they will find other ways to do that. That's something that one has to be alive to.
OK, well, let's take a different example to America. Let's take Australia. Yeah? 2012, Tony Abbott's the Prime Minister. They have been battling for years with the problem of the boats coming from Indonesia, and the numbers keep going up. And the distances are bigger, the boats are bigger, but the principle's pretty much exactly the same. They tried everything. They tried offshore processing. In the end, Tony Abbott said, you know what? Whatever all these international conventions and UN say, I don't care. I'm going to tow the boats back to Indonesia. And he literally towed the boats back to Indonesia. There was international condemnation, and within 2 weeks there were no boats. Don't you think the British public are at a point with this issue where they're demanding the government does something like that?
I absolutely agree with that. This is an issue that's gone deep into people's consciousness, and it is affecting all politics at the present time. So I accept entirely the government has got to take effective action to deal with this problem.
Do you think they will?
I believe that they will, because I'm no longer a politician, and I recognise that every MP in every part of the country is facing demands from their constituents to take action, and that message has clearly got to number 10.
The issue that I come back to, it is, but the issue I come back to, government, you and I have both been in government at senior levels, the government can want to do something, but if you've got a system, a judiciary, sometimes, dare I say it, officials within departments who don't really agree with what the government's trying to do, there are ways that they can frustrate the government's will. And that, I think, is a big problem. It's, in a way, a bigger problem than just saying we're going to deport the people and we're going to get more muscular.
And, of course, it all depends, really, who is at the head of the Labour government. Why do I say that? Because in a moment I'm being joined by Sacha Lord. He was an advisor for Andy Burnham up in Manchester, and he's talked about his own party saying that the fish rots from the head down. Alongside that, Andy Burnham tonight appears on the front page of the New Statesman. It looks like he's limbering up for a tilt at the leadership. We'll ask in a moment, does he have a chance?
Can't wait to get in that sea.
Lovely and warm.
Just like the feeling of having great travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Western and central parts of Europe will start to see any heavy downpours easing away, though some scattered showers will still remain. That's not so much the case across the Canary Islands, Madeira, also Spain and Portugal. Mostly settled here, largely dry, plenty of sunny spells. But across France, even into parts of Germany, we could still see some isolated showers remain. But through Italy, the Adriatic coastline and also parts of Greece remaining settled, dry with sunny spells, though we could start to see more showers over the weekend.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello, good evening. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Over the coming days, it should remain mostly dry and a rather settled picture. Still chilly overnight with some fog possible during the early hours of the morning. That's before some rainfall as we head towards the weekend. But the reason it's so dry and settled over the coming days, it's all due to high pressure situated to the northeast of the country. But eventually, we'll start to see some systems move in from the Atlantic. Now through into the evening, it is going to turn chilly as soon as the sun goes down, remaining mostly dry, plenty of clear skies, particularly in the west. So it's likely we'll see some frost here through the early hours of the morning, also some mist and fog, but more cloud across parts of the southeast. So it's not going to turn quite as chilly here, but many towns and cities mostly in the mid to high single figures. So across Scotland to start the day, once again it is going to be fairly chilly, particularly in any rural spots. Mostly dry, though we could start to see some high cloud build in from the west, a very slight chance of some isolated spells of rain here. Northern Ireland and northern parts of England, it should be a mostly dry and bright start, but once again some mist and fog in places, and fairly similar elsewhere across the rest of England and Wales, and still fairly breezy around southeastern coasts too. But through Thursday it'll be fairly similar to what we saw today, mostly dry, plenty of sunny spells, wall-to-wall blue skies for many areas. But western parts of Scotland, it is still going to be fairly breezy here, some high cloud pushing in. That will just create hazier spells of sunshine. But for most, it should be a mostly pleasant day. Temperatures will just start to push into the low 20s around the London area, but elsewhere mid to high teens, and still remaining fairly breezy around southeastern coasts. Through into Friday, once again, another chilly start, some mist and fog patches possible, but more clouds starting to push into the very far southeast. A chance we could see an isolated shower push through, and similar across the far northeast of England, and also Scotland too could see the odd isolated shower. But many, once again, it should be a mostly dry day. That's before a more unsettled picture as we head into Saturday. It's likely we'll see spells of rain and some possible strong winds.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, last week when he was asked, Andy Burnham, the Mayor of Manchester, refused to rule out having a tilt at the leadership. And as I said before the break, he's on the front page of this week's New Statesman, putting out his pitch. And Sacha Lord, who was with him, he's an entrepreneur and former nighttime economy advisor to Greater Manchester and to Burnham, said this. He said, "I don't have faith in the current leadership, who has recently shown a lack of judgment and loyalty. The Cabinet is, again, far too London-centric, having promised more power to the regions, which now seems to be just shallow words. It's apparent the current Chancellor has no interest in hospitality, the UK's fifth biggest sector. Her national insurance increase was both reckless and short-sighted. A fish rots from the head." When he joins me down the line, Sacha Lord, good evening. He's coming. Good evening.
Good evening, Nigel. How are you?
Yeah, very well, but these are pretty damning words about your own party.
Well, I'll tell you the reason why, actually. And I said yesterday on Twitter that this year I'm not going to bother attending the Labour Party conference. It's the first time since I've become a Labour Party member. I was a Labour Party donor. And simply, I spent many, many months talking to what were then the shadow cabinet before they came into government. And they were telling me what they thought I wanted to hear. You've mentioned Nighttime Economy Advisor. I'm still the chair of the Nighttime Industry Association. Hospitality is the 5th biggest sector in the whole of the UK, Nigel, with the 3rd largest employer. And this government have let us down so badly. We are now seeing more closures than ever before. We're losing a pub a day because of this government, because of the way they're taxing us, the national insurance increase that nobody saw coming, by the way. That was the final nail in the coffin. We're now touching £6.50 on average for a pint. I'm hearing in London,
Tell me about it.
£8. And we're being crucified. Do you know what the profit is on a pint?
Sasha, I know all about the price of a pint. You're talking to the right person, believe you me. But, I mean, are you suggesting, and it seems that you are, that a change of leader with a new Chancellor is what the Labour Party needs? Are you saying that Andy Burnham is the man for the job?
Well, I've not mentioned Andy Burnham. The media picked that up yesterday. I mentioned the current leader, and he's not right for the party. And I have to tell you, the amount of Labour members, the amount of Labour councillors that reached out to me privately yesterday to say, do you know what? Thank God that somebody has actually spoken out and said what we are thinking. And it had to be said. That is the feeling at the moment amongst members.
No, I'll ask you one more time. You know, given your association with Andy Burnham, do you think he's the right man for the job?
And again, my response is, I can't speak on behalf of Andy Burnham. What I can say
I didn't ask you to. I didn't ask you to. I want to hear from you.
I spent 7 years with Andy Burnham working extremely closely. What I like about him, and you've met far more politicians than I have. What I like about him is he's different to many that I've seen. He's the same person behind the camera than he is in front of the camera. And he cares for people. And I've seen that in action. That's what I like about him.
Okay.
Obviously, he's the mayor of Greater Manchester at the moment. So there are things, you know, that would have to happen for him to run for leadership. He's not an MP. But he's a good person. The things he's done for Greater Manchester have been incredible. They've been fantastic. He's transformed it.
OK, Sasha, I'll take that as a non-endorsement. Yes, thank you very much indeed for joining us. I quite enjoyed that. And let's just have a quick look at the New Statesman front page, just so my panel can see it and you at home can see it. There you are, the picture, the style. Jeff, it's all happening, isn't it?
No, it isn't.
Oh, come on.
And the reason it's not happening is because just over a year ago, the British people elected a Labour government by a huge majority, and a large part of that was the leadership of Keir Starmer, because he represented a real break with the past, a real break with the Conservative Party that had had leader after leader after leader.
True.
The British people simply will not understand a political party who's changing leaders like they're changing their shirts. It's not going to happen.
Look, well, he does. I mean, let's be fair, Kwasi. I mean, we had lots of leaders. How many leaders you had?
5. I mean, they all.
I bet you can't remember.
I was loyal to all of them. I never signed any letters. I never put any letters into the 22. But look, the point isn't whether you think, Jeff, that Keir Starmer's the right man. The point is that lots and lots of people in the Labour Party, in your party, are saying what Sasha are saying, and Andy is clearly limbering up for some form of challenge. I mean, I saw this with our 5 leaders. You know, we had lots of people who were waiting in the wings. And I remember Theresa years ago, I think it was 2014, all of a sudden there was a picture of her on the front of Vogue or wherever it was, or she had the interview, all of that.
Yeah.
And I'm afraid when I look at that and see that, I think this is somebody who's clearly chancing his arm and fancies a pop at the top job, regardless of whether you think Keir Starmer is the right man and has got the mandate and all of that. That's what's happening at a political or a personal level. And I think Andy he's not showing loyalty. I think he should be a team player. I know him. I think what Sasha said about him is true. I think he's a personable guy.
That point was powerful. He's the same person in public as he is in private.
And I dealt, when he was Mayor of London, I was Secretary of State for Business.
Yeah.
I had dealings with him. and he's a very personable guy. But what's happening now is he clearly sees that there's weakness, there's a lot of disaffection in the Labour Party about the leadership, and he's essentially presenting himself as an alternative. I mean, it's pretty blatant.
It's pretty blatant.
My question, my actual belief, is that it won't make any difference, because whether it's Andy Burnham or Wes Streeting or Angela Rayner or whoever, they are stuck to the policies that the government has outlined. They're not suddenly going to reduce taxes.
Jeff made the point they want a thumping majority, and under the system they did win a thumping majority, but it's been the worst start for any government since Subbits.
Well, largely because we inherited a dreadful situation.
No, but they made mistakes. You made mistakes. I mean, the winter fuel payment was a totally self-inflicted error.
I'm not pretending. I mean, I think back to 1997 and 1998, and I'm sure Tony Blair would concede that we made mistakes.
But your honeymoon period was extraordinary, and your Prime Minister, your leader then, was optimistic, popular, positive, incredible orator. He didn't need notes. And this guy, just over a year in, it got a hollow look to him. Doesn't even look to be enjoying it.
I think he's had a much tougher time than we had between 97 and 98. Actually, the economic situation we inherited was probably much better than we thought, whereas actually the inheritance this time has been much worse than they thought.
No, but they had self-inflicted mistakes. I mean, when they came in, there was a measure of goodwill, because everyone said, oh, the chaos of the Tories and all of that. He came in, and the first thing he did was he did a deal with the unions, and then to pay for that, he took away winter fuel payment from 10 million pensioners. And they defended it for 10 months. And it was only when they had the disaster of the local elections that they did a U-turn. But of course, the political damage had already been done. So there have been lots of mistakes that they've done, which have essentially landed them with, what, 22% in the polls?
But he doesn't look happy in the job, is the point I'm making.
I'm not sure that's right. He's also dealing with a whole range of international issues very, very effectively, and has won lots of support for the measures that he's taken. So I recognise that criticisms we just heard from an entrepreneur, from a businessman about raising national insurance and so on.
In the hospitality and entertainment area.
Right. But what he demonstrated, I think, was a one-sided view of policy. And Kwasi, who was a former Chancellor of the Exchequer, he knows that every time you pull a lever in the Treasury, something wrong happens somewhere. You can never take a decision on taxation without upsetting somebody.
But that was my point about the replacing the people. Replacing Keir or Rachel Reeves with Labour Prime Minister, Labour, they're not going to change anything.
No.
It'll be exactly the same.
Well,
they're on exactly the same path.
They've certainly got into trouble pretty blooming quickly. Now, in a moment, we are going to have an economics lesson. Yes, we are. We are going to have a legendary man, Art Laffer. He's going to be joining us. He's going to explain to us a theory that he's had going back for the best part of half a century, that if you put taxes up too much, you actually receive less in terms of revenue. And as I think ahead to the budget coming on November the 26th, where we're all told there are yet more tax increases coming, I'm going to ask Art whether he thinks the British government's got this wrong. And we might even ask Kwasi whether perhaps he had it right.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m.
Only on GB News.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Okoye, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There, you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Art Laffer is a very famous American economist, and he came up with a theory many, many years ago, I think best part of half a century ago, and he produced something that was called the Laffer curve. Now, we don't normally do economics lessons on this programme, but that's the Laffer curve. Keep it in your mind as I now show you tax in this country as a share of GDP since the war. Well, you can see we came out of the war absolutely bankrupt with high taxes. Over time that fell, but we're now back actually paying more tax as a share of our national economy than we've been at any point since the dark days of 1945. And the prospects are that we will go into the November the 26th budget with that burden rising further. Some would argue that the recent increases in alcohol duty have led to less revenue on alcohol, and maybe it feeds through. Well, Dr. Laffer, economist and former Reagan advisor, joins me down the line from the USA. Art, very good to see you. Now,
lovely to see you, Nigel. Lovely to see you.
Now, we're now a pretty heavily taxed country over here, and it's about to get worse. Should the government rethink what it's doing?
It should, completely, it should. And by the way, I love the way you say the Laffer curve. It reminds me of Nigel Lawson, by the way. Laffer, how's your curve? I just love the way it is. But it's so true. I mean, if we didn't learn enough lessons from Gordon Brown's increasing the highest tax rate from 40p to 50p and watch the whole economy collapse and people leaving the country and all the tax evasion, avoidance, underground economy, and revenues coming down and economy doing very badly, that was a perfect example. And then Cameron only reduced it back from 50 down to 45p. He should have gone not only down to 40p, he should have gone down below 40p. It was Lady Thatcher who brought us down to 40p, and we should have continued on that trend in Britain. And the alcohol tax is exactly correct what you're saying. And watching you and Quasi parlay it together is such a delight. He's one of my dearest friends and one of the best people in the world. He had a great plan. He just wasn't able to put it into effect. You're doing the job in Britain, though. Boy, are we proud of you.
Let me ask you, what would you say to lower income people who are sold the argument by the Labour Party and elsewhere that actually the rich should pay a bigger part, the rich should pay their fair share? What would you say to people on lower incomes? Because they kind of agree with the argument.
Yeah, I would agree with them, but the way they pay more taxes is by lowering the tax rate on the rich, not by raising it. The rich people know how to get around taxes. They have the means to avoid, evade, or otherwise not report taxable income. They can hire lawyers, accountants, deferred income specialists. They can move to different locations. They can change the composition of their income. They can change the timing of their income. They have all these things. So if you lower the rate, they don't want to do these things. They'll just pay their taxes fair and square, and you'll get a huge increase in tax revenues. Just what we found happened to Reagan when we cut the highest tax rate from 70% to 28%. Is that a good enough one for you?
Yeah.
Good enough to cut the tax rate?
Yeah.
Tax revenues on the top 1% of income earners went through the ceiling. The same thing occurred with Andrew Mellon. The same thing occurred with John F. Kennedy. Lowering tax rates on the rich is the way to collect more money from the rich, because they stop using all these circumventions around the tax system and they pay their taxes fair and square, and the economy does really well. And guess who gets the best benefit? The poor, the minorities, the disenfranchised. They are the ones that really do well from a booming economy. It's just as simple. I mean, you know, as Larry Gatlin says here in Nashville, Tennessee, and forgive me my hillbilly background, but it ain't rocket surgery, Nigel. It ain't rocket surgery. It's just common sense. It's facts. And I love it. And I hear these people all over the place spouting nonsense over there, and it's just nonsense. I don't give a darn what anyone's opinion is. This is about facts, not how you feel. If you want to solve the problem, look at facts. Don't look at squealing people up there touting their virtue signaling. They're touting it.
This is beautiful. It's economic evangelicalism. We're loving it. We're going to get you back on. I'm going to get you back on after our budget on November the 26th, all right?
Well, I'm coming back. I am coming back to Britain, by the way. Coming there. I've got my big book that's coming out, which is Prosperity Through Growth. I've got it co-authored with Matthew Elliott, with Michael Hinsey, and Douglas McWilliams, and it's going to be great. We got a 3-day thing, and we want to get you involved with us because you are the hero. You really are. And we in America are rooting for you all the way. Thank you, Nigel.
I'll be there. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
That's awesome.
And I've got to tell the audience, he's not that young, but you wouldn't believe it with the energy. So you tried to do the right thing, but couldn't do it.
I think we pushed it very fast, and I think there's always an issue with markets and reaction. But broadly, he's absolutely right. I mean, you look at the top rates of tax we had in the 70s. You know, Margaret Thatcher reduced it from 83%.
Yep.
That's what the richest
to
40%. And of course, revenues went up nearly every year she was in government. And my fear is that the more they increase taxes, and it's not like the 70s. People are much more mobile than the 70s. That's the thing. I mean, you can go to Dubai, you can run your business on Zoom or the internet or what have you. And my fear, and it's happening, is that a lot of the wealth creators are just going to move the
Well, they are. You see, and you know, Jeremy Hunt put some really stringent measures on the so-called non-doms. Rachel Reeves has taken it further. The non-doms are leaving, the wealthy rich are leaving, lots of 30-something entrepreneurs are leaving. Jeff, haven't we got to rethink all of this?
Well, for the sake of time this evening, I'm going to point out that there's a real difference between the US and the UK. Okay. Having said that, when I lived in the United States, my tax bill was more or less the same as my tax bill in the UK. By the time I paid federal tax, state tax, local taxes, and on top of which I also had to pay a significant sum every month in medical insurance, all of which, of course, is paid for by the taxes that people pay in this country. So I'm not actually convinced about this argument that the US pays lower taxes than the UK.
No, but the point is the direction of travel, and the graph was very good. If you look, and that was what we were wrestling with. We were clearly on a cycle where taxes were going up and up and up and up as a proportion of the national wealth. And that can't end well. I think we've got to reverse that.
But I think actually Jeff's right in many ways. In most states in America, you probably would pay about the same amount of taxes here.
But in a lot of them,
if you're on an average income. But the specific point I was making is the super rich are leaving. And, you know, politicians say, oh, you know, the rich... But if you try and get more out of the rich and they go away, you get less.
Well, I shouldn't bang on too much about my time in the United States, but I was a law professor there, and the most popular course for lawyers was revenue law. Why? Because the US code is full of exemptions, full of ways, much more complicated than actually our system.
Well, ours is getting that very complicated. I mean, you've seen the tax code in Britain? I mean, it's vast.
But here, the super rich are leaving, and they're leaving in big numbers. That's a mistake, isn't it?
I totally agree with you, and I think the problem with this is that if you get enough people, wealth creators, leaving, you're not going to generate any wealth. I mean, it's that simple.
Yeah, and it isn't just that they're rich, but they invest, they employ people, they spend money.
They go to restaurants, they go to hospitality.
I think we're making a terrible mistake.
And I think time will tell, but I think that once we see the budget, because you remember, they said they came in and said there's a 22 billion black hole. Now the black hole is what, between 40 and 50?
Yeah, it's...
Having raised taxes.
This argument is quite interesting for me in one sense, because there are large numbers of people, certainly when I was in government, in the Labour Party, who said you must tax the rich more.
Yes.
Okay? And I got the statistics out.
Yeah.
If you tax the rich more, it does not raise very much money.
Therefore,
it's true. But therefore, what you're saying isn't going to make a huge difference. Those people are not going to make a huge contribution to the British economy.
I tell you what, the top 1% of taxpayers in Britain are now paying 30% of the revenue. We need to keep them. Art Laffer is a star, isn't he?
He's one of my great heroes. In 1979, the top 1% of taxpayers paid 6% of total income tax. It's now just shy of 30%. Lower rates really work. What's interesting about Jeff's position is that Tony Blair actually understood this, and therefore the top rate of tax didn't change under that government.
It only changed the last year.
Rachel Reeves doesn't understand that. That's the real difference. This current government doesn't realise.
No, I think you're right, Jacob. In a few seconds, what have you got tonight?
Oh, really exciting. I think Keir Starmer's in terrible trouble over the non-declaration of the support he got from Labour together.
There we are. Politics and money. No good ever comes of it. First, though, let's have a look at the all-important weather.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boiler sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello, good evening. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Over the coming days, it should remain mostly dry and a rather settled picture. Still chilly overnight with some fog possible during the early hours of the morning. That's before some rainfall as we head towards the weekend. But the reason it's so dry and settled over the coming days, it's all due to high pressure situated to the northeast of the country. But eventually, we'll start to see some systems move in from the Atlantic. Now through into the evening, it is going to turn chilly as soon as the sun goes down, remaining mostly dry, plenty of clear skies, particularly in the west. So it's likely we'll see some frost here through the early hours of the morning, also some mist and fog, but more cloud across parts of the southeast. So it's not going to turn quite as chilly here, but many towns and cities mostly in the mid to high single figures. So across Scotland to start the day, once again, it is going to be fairly chilly, particularly in any rural spots. Mostly dry, though we could start to see some high cloud build in from the west. A very slight chance of some isolated spells of rain here. Northern Ireland and northern parts of England, it should be a mostly dry and bright start, but once again, some mist and fog in places, and fairly similar elsewhere across the rest of England and Wales, and still fairly breezy around southeastern coasts too. But through Thursday, it'll be fairly similar to what we saw today. Mostly dry, plenty of sunny spells, wall-to-wall blue skies for many areas. But western parts of Scotland, it is still going to be fairly breezy here. Some high cloud pushing in. That will just create hazier spells of sunshine. But for most, it should be a mostly pleasant day. Temperatures will just start to push into the low 20s around the London area, but elsewhere, mid to high teens, and still remaining fairly breezy around southeastern coasts. Through into Friday, once again, another chilly start, some mist and fog patches possible, but more clouds starting to push into the very far southeast. A chance we could see an isolated shower push through, and similar across the far northeast of England, and also Scotland too could see the odd isolated shower. But many, once again, it should be a mostly dry day. That's before a more unsettled picture as we head into Saturday. It's likely we'll see spells of rain and some possible strong winds.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boy sponsors the weather on GB News.
This is your chance to win a motorhome and cash in our biggest giveaway to date. Courtesy of Marquis Leisure, you could be the proud owner of this 2025 Benamar Primero. It comfortably accommodates 4 people and can be driven on your standard driving licence. Plus, you'll also bank an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash to spend on anything you like. Make sure you don't miss out. For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63225. 225. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB16 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 31st of October. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
No,
isn't it?
no,
Because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes and Co weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
Practice Trump made a good start. No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.